Studios in the 90s produced a number of legal thrillers that trusted audiences to handle complexity. They greenlit projects about AIDS discrimination, childhood trauma, and corporate malfeasance without demanding happy endings. And they cast unknowns in roles that could have gone to established stars. Directors brought prestige sensibilities to genre material, and the result was a decade of courtroom dramas that asked audiences to wrestle with questions the justice system couldn't answer. Alan Pakula's Presumed Innocent opens the decade with one of civilization's most primal fears: the terror of being found guilty for something you didn't do. Harrison Ford plays Rusty Sabich, a prosecutor who becomes the prime suspect when his colleague and former lover turns up dead. And what Ford captures is a man watching his entire life disintegrate while insisting on his innocence. The evidence mounts. His career crumbles. Scott Turow's 1987 novel spent 45 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and redefined what legal thrillers could accomplish, which explains why Warner Brothers bought the film rights before the book even hit shelves. Kevin Costner passed on the lead role, and producer Sidney Pollack vetoed Robert Redford over age concerns, which meant Ford became the only actor offered the part once Pakula signed on. $7 million bought his commitment to the project, and Ford suggested giving Rusty a buzz cut to make the character seem stiffer and less sympathetic. It was a major box office success, grossing over $221 million on just a $20 million budget, proving that audiences hungered for adult dramas that treated them like grown-ups. A Time to Kill poses a question that sounds simple, but isn't. Can vigilante justice ever be morally justified? Samuel L. Jackson plays Carl Lee Haley, a father who kills the two men who brutally assaulted his 10-year-old daughter, and Matthew McConaughey plays Jake Brigance, the young attorney who agrees to defend him in a Mississippi courtroom where the defendant is black and the jury is white.
Do you think the jury should convict Carl Lee Haley?
Don't answer that question, Deputy. He's a hero. You turn him loose.
John Grisham wrote the novel between 1984 and 1987, while serving in the Mississippi House of Representatives, inspired by witnessing a rape case in DeSoto County. The victim's testimony left him shaken, and he later recalled staring at the defendant and wishing he had a gun. That impulse became a story. 28 publishers rejected the manuscript before Winwood Press printed just 5,000 copies, and the book only became a bestseller after the firm took off in 1991. Test audiences gave unprecedented approval, and the film opened at number 1 before grossing over $152 million worldwide. That closing argument from Jake Brigance remains one of the most devastating courtroom scenes the decade produced. Philadelphia broke ground as the first major Hollywood studio film to tackle AIDS with A-list stars, and the conversation changed because of it. Tom Hanks plays Andrew Beckett, a brilliant attorney fired from his prestigious firm after they discover his diagnosis, and Denzel Washington plays Joe Miller, a homophobic personal injury lawyer who reluctantly takes the case and finds his prejudices challenged by the man he's defending. Jonathan Demme developed the project after his friend Juan Suarez Botas received an AIDS diagnosis in 1988, and screenwriter Ron Neiswaner went through 25 drafts over 5 years to get it right. The story drew inspiration from Jeffrey Bowers, an attorney who sued Baker McKenzie for wrongful dismissal in 1987. Hanks ultimately landed the role because his non-intimidating screen persona could help mainstream audiences empathize with the character. Shooting in chronological order allowed him to lose 35 pounds gradually as his character's health declined. 53 HIV-positive actors appeared in the film, and 43 of them died within 1 year of release. Hanks won the Academy Award for Best Actor, while Bruce Springsteen took home Best Original Song for Streets of Philadelphia, and the film is attributed to fostering accurate public awareness about the AIDS epidemic. 1991's Class Action pits a father against his daughter in a lawsuit that forces both to confront their own moral compromises. Gene Hackman plays Jedediah Tucker Ward, a flamboyant public interest attorney representing victims of a defective automobile and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio plays his estranged daughter Maggie, a corporate defense lawyer who discovers her clients have buried evidence that could destroy her father's case and save lives. 5 years of development shaped the screenplay, with writer Samantha Shadd drawing inspiration from the Ford Pinto fuel tank controversy. The real case, Grimshaw versus Ford Motor Company, awarded the plaintiff $125 million in punitive damages after the Pinto's design flaw caused fatal burns, and that shadow hangs over every courtroom scene. Director Michael Apted came from documentary work on the acclaimed Up series, and his instinct pushed the production toward depicting legal process as accurately as possible. But neither character escapes judgment in this story. Jed Ward crusades publicly, while his infidelity privately destroys his family, and Maggie builds her career defending corporations she knows are guilty. The father-daughter tension gives what could have been standard corporate malfeasance some genuine emotional stakes. Primal Fear gives us a slick Chicago defense attorney who finally meets a client he cannot figure out. Richard Gere plays Martin Vale, a media-hungry lawyer who takes on the case of Aaron Stampler, a stuttering altar boy accused of murdering a beloved archbishop. The evidence seems overwhelming, but Aaron may not be exactly who he appears. Ed Norton was 26 during filming, and his performance earned a Golden Globe win plus an Academy Award nomination, which is an incredibly rare achievement for a debut. Before Primal Fear even opened, he had already landed roles in The People vs. Larry Flynt and Everyone Says I Love You. The movie grossed over $100 million worldwide on a $30 million budget and held the #1 spot for 3 consecutive weeks. Gregory Hoblit directed his feature debut after Emmy-winning work on L.A. Law and NYPD Blue, and he credited Richard Gere for clearing the path to let Norton shine. What makes the movie memorable is its deeply cynical ending, a reminder that sometimes the system gets played by those who understand it best. Brad Renfro plays Mark Sway, an 11-year-old who witnesses a mob lawyer's suicide and learns where a murdered senator's body is buried, which means the FBI wants him to testify while the mob wants him dead. His only protection comes from a recovering alcoholic attorney played by Susan Sarandon. Joel Schumacher refused to cast a child actor for the role. His demand was specific: a real kid with a real accent. Casting directors contacted Jesuit priests, alternative schools, and police departments, asking if they knew any tough kids, and between 5,000 and 6,000 children auditioned before a retired DARE officer in Knoxville, Tennessee, recommended Brad Renfro. The boy was 10 years old, living in a trailer park with his grandmother, with 0 acting experience. John Grisham himself required that whoever played Mark had to be an unknown from Tennessee. Schumacher later explained he wanted a kid who understood in the marrow of his psyche what growing up too soon felt like. Sarandon earned an Academy Award nomination and won the BAFTA for Best Actress, and the film grossed over $117 million worldwide against $45 million in production costs. Time Out called it the best adaptation of a John Grisham novel to that point. Renfro went on to star in Sleepers 2 years later, and his death from a drug overdose at age 25 in 2008 remains one of the decade's genuine tragedies. A civil action closed out the decade with perhaps its most sobering message: sometimes doing the right thing destroys you. John Travolta plays Jan Schlichtman, a personal injury attorney who takes on 8 families in Woburn, Massachusetts, whose children developed leukemia from contaminated water, and Robert Duvall plays Jerome Fachet, the opposing counsel who knows exactly how to outlast an idealistic opponent. Jonathan Harr's 1995 book won the National Book Critics Circle Award for nonfiction and spent 2 years on the New York Times bestseller list, and Robert Redford purchased the film rights. The real case, Anderson versus Cryovac, involved 3 corporations accused of contaminating municipal wells. 79 days of trial, 5 children and 1 adult dead. Steven Zaillian, who won an Oscar for his Schindler's List screenplay, opens the film with a brutal monologue about how dead plaintiffs are valued. A dead child, Schlichtman explains, is worth the least of all. The real Jerome Fachet reportedly claimed Duvall played him better than he could play himself, and Duvall earned an Academy Award nomination for the performance. Conrad Hall, who shot Class Action 7 years earlier, brought the same visual intelligence to what critics called a smart and unconventional legal drama. The film argues that the law is about who wins rather than who should win, and sometimes the people with the deepest pockets win by default. 1996's Sleepers tells the story of 4 boys from Hell's Kitchen, whose lives are destroyed by a juvenile detention center, and the lengths they'll go to for revenge decades later. Brad Pitt, Jason Patric, Kevin Bacon, Robert De Niro, and Dustin Hoffman fill out the star-studded cast, and the film opens with a title card claiming, "This is a true story about friendship that runs deeper than blood." Barry Levinson purchased the rights to Lorenzo Carcaterra's book for $2.1 million at auction, but the truthfulness of that source material became a major controversy. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office stated no records of the case existed, and when the New York Times investigated, they found no evidence supporting the story. The Catholic League protested and called the book a hoax. School records showed Carcaterra missed no more than 20 days total, making his extended reform school claims impossible. Carcaterra told Time magazine that telling such a story requires changing dates, names, places, and people. The film was a hit regardless. John Williams earned an Oscar nomination for his score, and Levinson defended the project by asking what the big quest for truth was when dealing with 4 boys no one ever heard of. The controversy over whether any of it actually happened overshadowed the film's release, but the questions it raises about revenge and complicity don't require a true story to leave you feeling unsettled. Francis Ford Coppola's The Rainmaker follows a freshly minted lawyer who hasn't learned to be cynical yet, and the film watches as the system tries to teach him. Matt Damon plays Rudy Baylor, a young attorney whose first case pits him against a health insurance company that denied a bone marrow transplant to a dying young man. Danny DeVito plays his unlicensed partner, and Jon Voight plays the corporate attorney determined to bury them both. Coppola picked up Grisham's novel at an airport, read it during his flight, and decided to direct it himself. Memphis and Cleveland provided the locations, and Coppola used unconventional rehearsal methods that were later documented in a making-of film. Teresa Wright, the Oscar-winning actress from Mrs. Miniver, came out of near retirement for what became her final screen role, praising Coppola for his extensive rehearsal process and calling it unusual for the era. Grisham himself called it the best adaptation of any of his books, and critics agreed, with Rotten Tomatoes showing 82% positive reviews. Many consider it the finest Grisham film ever made. But earning under $50 million in box office made it a commercial disappointment, and more significantly, it marked the end of Coppola's studio career. Another theatrical film wouldn't come for 10 years.